Hey, assalamualaikum everyone. This is Emin Masood. Welcome to my YouTube channel, That Blind Girl. Today's video will be in the That Blind Girl Talks About the Law playlist. What I'm going to talk about today is a few things about family law. This isn't a subject I've studied too much, so I'm not going to go into too much depth because I don't want to misguide anyone, and also because every state has its own special rules. But there are some basic things that we should all keep in mind. Starting off with the very basic thing, marriage. So for marriage to be accepted, the couple needs to get a marriage license from the county. There's a set date by which the couple should then get married, or the license will expire and the couple will have to apply for a new license. The other thing is that there needs to be, after getting the license, there needs to be a ceremony, whether that's in a mosque, a masjid, or a church, or wherever, or in a court. There needs to be a formal ceremony to recognize the marriage. And then usually that just about settles it, and the marriage is considered complete. If there are any expectations that the couple has before marriage, they should probably get that in writing, especially as it relates to property ownership, because that can limit the kinds of disputes that can arise later. Moving on to, speaking of property, there are a few states where any property you acquire from your earnings after you get married is considered community property, meaning the property of your marital community, meaning both yours and your wife's, or your husband's, or your spouse's, basically. So if you get a really good job if you get married and then you get a really good job, and then you buy a house with it, that house belongs to you and your spouse. If you had the house before you got married, then it's your separate property. If you join your spouse in the title, though, then it's community property. And so then it will belong to both you and your spouse. This rule isn't applicable in every state. So most states use the equitable distribution system where each spouse has the right according to their contribution to the marriage. If a marriage is stable and peaceful, for the most part, then and there are no disputes, and if the marriage stays, then this issue really doesn't come up, this issue of property ownership. Now, it can come up, and in fact, it can cause it can come up if there is a dispute, and especially if there's a divorce case. It can also be the reason for a dispute or a divorce case. If unfortunately, God forbid, there is a divorce, then property in community property states, community property is divided equally between the spouses. In equitable property states, equitable distribution states, the property is distributed according to the spouse's contribution to the marriage. In a lot of cases, this can bring about the same result as a community property state, in that both spouses get an equal share, an equal 1/2 share. In a lot of cases, it can bring about different results. So in equitable distribution states, this is something to keep in mind. If one spouse dies, then and dies without a will, without a valid will, then then in a community property state, the half of the community property is given outright to the spouse. And the spouse takes a certain share in the other half of the property, the community property. In fact, as it comes to wills, because both spouses own community property equally, the spouse who died, neither spouse has the right to will away the entire property. So they can only put in the will what they want done with half of the community property, with their half of the community property. The other half goes outright to the spouse, to the surviving spouse. A wide range of rules apply in equitable distribution states. And so one more note on wills is that if you want your property to be distributed a certain way, definitely have a will. And especially, if your religion has certain requirements, like as a Muslim, I know that Islam has certain requirements about wills and who gets what, then you should definitely have those in a will, so that the state you're in doesn't distribute the property according to its own laws, but rather it follows your will. Because if you don't have a will, the state will distribute your property according to its laws. Usually, a lot of times people think that if you don't have a will, the state will take your property for its own. Typically, that's not the case unless you have no living relatives that they can find. If you do, though, then they will distribute the property according to their laws, unless you have a will. And so you should have a will so that the court knows how to distribute your property. Wills are usually the court that looks at excuse me. The court that looks at wills is called The probate court, it's a division within the local county court. Coming back to issues during the marriage, one issue that comes up is, and this is very sad, but abuse. No spouse can legally abuse the other spouse. Now, in a lot of cases, I've heard people say that a man can't beat his wife. Yes, that's true. A man cannot beat his wife legally. At the same time, a woman cannot beat her husband. And really, no one can beat anyone else. No one can beat their spouse. Unfortunately, there have been sad incidents, and there are many sad incidents. In most cases, you see that men beat their wives. There are some cases where it's the other way around, I've actually heard that some people within my own community say that that's because women have rights here, and so they can beat their husbands or harm them or hurt their in-laws, hurt their husbands' families. The law doesn't allow that. Just as the law doesn't allow the husband or the husband's family to hurt the woman, so the law does not allow the woman to hurt her husband or her husband's family. I'm not going to go into much detail about the specific cases because they're very sad. One thing I want to talk about, though, is financial dealings with your family. A lot of times people think that just because it's your family, it's okay to undercut them. There aren't always, but there can be legal consequences for that, really bad legal consequences. So it's not really a good idea to undercut your family or to undercut anyone financially, because if that's proven, if your family member does go to court over it, and they're able to prove that you've defrauded them or hurt them financially, then they can recover from you, and it's a dirty business, right? It really ruins family relationships, so definitely not a good idea to do that. I know a lot of times it feels like with our family we can relax standards, they'll understand, and for the most part our families do, but sometimes things can get really over the top, and you really need to keep that in mind. We should treat our family as when it comes to like finances, we should treat our family pretty fairly. Excuse me. The one other thing, parents, and this is about child rearing, both parents have equal rights to child rearing unless there is a case of child abuse. Both parents have equal rights to decide how the child will be educated, how the child will be raised. The thing that we need to be careful of course, is the fine line between disciplining and using physical force with in disciplining the child, and child abuse. If if you're found to have abused your child, then your child can be taken away, and Child Protective Services can do that. So definitely, if you consider using physical force to discipline your child, definitely keep that in mind. There is some room, but you need to be careful there. The other thing, both parents can decide who can meet the child, and this rule even applies to grandparents. So I know it sounds pretty bad, but parents can decide whether their child will meet their grandparents, the child's grandparents. So if, for example, a woman decides that she doesn't want her child's grandparents on the dad's side to meet the child, she can have that in place. But the child's dad can then also have the rule in place that the child's grandparents on the mom's side can't meet the child either. I don't recommend that course of action. I think that if at all possible, if there's no danger of abuse, a child should be allowed to meet family members on both sides. And I think that it's good for the child's upbringing. This constant, your mom's side is bad or your dad's side is bad because they said something to me, that kind of thing, and don't meet them because of that. Yes, you can say that, but it has lots of social consequences, and also, then your spouse also has the right to say things, and you don't want your child to be stuck in this sort of back and forth, because these things can lead then to bigger disputes, even divorce and child custody cases, which are very, very complicated. Usually, a child, if there is a child custody dispute, usually both parents are granted some amount of custody over the child. Usually custody doesn't just pass into one parent's hands and block the other parent from visiting. A lot of people think that in America, the mother necessarily gets the child. That's not always true. So that's just something to keep in mind. The court decides what's best for the child. And that's why you don't want to go down that road. The court decides what's best for the child, where the child where the child will be best raised, and lots of other factors. So these are just some things about family law that we should think about when we think of family law. If you want me to go more in depth, definitely let me know. I hope today's video was informative, and if you liked it, definitely feel free to like and share it. Subscribe to this channel for more videos. Thank you.